You're at your old trusty boat. You call mighty sparrow. I'm in the city of Mardi Gras.
Welcome to the Sailing into Oblivion podcast, where we sit down with everyday people who do extraordinary things. I'm your host, Jerome Rand. Welcome aboard, Mighty Sparrow, once again tied to a dock. It has been a whirlwind of wonder. I have been on land approximately 4 hours now, and it's so amazing to pull in and have friends there to greet you, even off of a short-lived trip like 6 days. It's still, there's nothing better. And seeing some old faces that I have not seen since I left here in October of last year is absolutely amazing. Oh, the beers have been flowing, which, since I haven't had any beers in days and days, kind of going to my head a little bit. So I don't know. We'll probably keep this one a little short and sweet, and then add in a couple of the podcasts I did out on the water. And Murph, tomorrow being Friday, I'm gonna go and I'm gonna start. Start work tomorrow at 7 a.m. So into work. It's only like 5:30 right now, but I am eyeballing my bunk something fierce. Oh, yesterday we had that. I think when I was doing the podcast yesterday, I want to say the winds were pretty much steady, easy going. I finished up that podcast and the winds cranked 25 to 30 knots right out of the west. We were reaching across them, just powering along, trying to get a little bit of room in between Sparrow and the Great South Channel and the fishing fleets and all that sort of stuff. The tide was with us, so we just ripped. Oh, it was great. And we're flying along, and then the wind started to get fickle just after midnight. So just about the time that I was trying to lay down and get a couple hours of sleep, the old wind did it again, and so I'm up and down trying to adjust, keep the boat going, keep the mainsail from slatting and all that. I've got as much canvas up as humanly possible. There's fishing boats, so I have the VHF on. The radio's going bonkers. People are yelling at each other. I think I might have talked about that if I even did a podcast this morning. I don't know if I did. My brain is scrambled. In any event, so all of yesterday, it's cranking, blowing like crazy, and then it dies off. And so all of last night, I just watched as the wind petered out and the waves stayed. Luckily for me, it just coincided just enough to be able to keep Sparrow going by adding more and more sail. But eventually, the stars came out, and there was something interesting, actually. The transatlantic flights that leave from the States, from what I understand, they typically try and fly those at night because there's less radiation or whatever from the sun. I don't know if that's a fact or not, but right after sunset, holy cow, it was like an armada was flying out of here. It was all commercial jets, but it was just one after another, all headed to the northeast, going over to Europe and all that sort of stuff. But it's pretty cool. In any event, so I got to watch that, and then there were a few lobster boats around, not too many, so it wasn't too bad. And I was just praying that the wind would hold. And it held until, I want to say again, probably around 11 o'clock at night. So last night, 11 o'clock, the winds finally die off to a point where I can no longer sail. And I'm sort of stuck in a situation where I'm about 60, 70 miles out from Rockland. And 60, 70 miles, say you're topping out at 6 knots, 10 hours you'll be there. So more like 12 hours. So I'm sitting there sort of juggling, should I try and get a couple hours sleep right now and then wake up in a few hours and motor because I have to, once you reach about Matinicus, which is one of the outlying islands here, they call it Lug Island because if you go out there, you got to lug everything because they don't have anything, any shops or anything out there. Yeah, once you reach that area, normally it's lobster pots every 10 feet or so. I mean, it's absolutely insane. It's a little earlier in the season this year that I'm up here, and not even half as many lobster pots, so that's kind of cool. Not that I would really want to just sleep and let the boat just go through them, because I know we're probably not going to catch them on the rudder, but if Mongo catches one, it can do some damage, because some of those pots, you might be picking up a buoy that's got 10 or 20 lobster pots on a string, and you don't even know it, and that can do some serious damage. So it's one of those things where if I'm not going to be motoring, or I wanted to make sure as I entered and got past Matinicus and all that stuff, I was awake and it was light, so I could see what was going on. And so I'm sitting there trying to juggle, like, okay, do I sleep now and then motor earlier? And I ended up, because I was still sort of awake, I figured, you know what, let's motor now, and that way we'll get a couple of hours, so maybe 15, 20 miles tops, and we'll also let the sea calm down so that when it is time for me to just shut it all down and drift, I will be so exhausted I'll be able to sleep straight away. And that was the game plan. Motoring, everything was going pretty good. Seas were calming down. Just sort of standing there watching, and a big cloud bank came in, which was kind of upsetting because the stars were really, really good. But the moon came out, all that sort of stuff. But again, it was in that cloud bank. And just kept going and going. And I think I made it till about 3:30, almost 4 in the morning. And was so tired and got within, I think it said like 47 miles or something. And again, if you hit the tide wrong, I pretty much think about my average of doing 100 miles a day, which is about 4 knots. Average. So 45 miles or so, we're looking at 11 hours. So if I slept until 6 in the morning, then wake up, start going again. If I have to motor, then I'll be there by 5 p.m. Perfect. All right, that works for me. So shut everything down, lock it up, and hit the bunk and immediately fall asleep, just straight into crazy dream zone. It's freezing cold, but it also smells so bad down below from just me being all closed up down here, and sort of the conditions being such that taking little showers and stuff up in the cockpit is sort of not happening. So I'm just foregoing that and not really changing any clothes or anything like that. You get the picture. It's a bit ripe, and eating lots of protein and cans of ravioli and stuff like that. You can imagine the effervescence that was. You get the picture. In any event. Oh man, I fall asleep, drastic REM sleep, brain is just dumping crazy dreams at me. I wake up at 6 in the morning. It's light, there's wind blowing. I am so discombobulated. I haven't had a sip of alcohol in like 3-4 days. I felt absolutely like I was completely hammered for at least a minute or two. I'm standing up in the cockpit like, what is going on? And it's sleep deprivation. It's, just not getting enough sleep. And then I sort of sort my brain out. I figure out exactly which way I'm supposed to be going. Peel the boat off that way, put up the mainsail, put up the drifter. It's blown probably 12 to 15 knots, so it's strong enough. And we're just hooning. All of a sudden, I look, and we're doing like 8 knots with the tide, and just cruising straight towards Rockland. The sea is flat, just tiny waves. Oh my gosh, it was like the best gift anybody could have ever gotten me in a million years. I just wanted to get in, be able to get off the boat. I had been just getting rocked around and sort of locked down below because it's cold out. And it was wet yesterday and all that. So we're hooning. But it's one of those things where I could already sort of see just the shape and the outline of Matinicus, which lies about 15 miles south of Rockland. And when you could see like that whole idea of like land ho, oh my gosh, and boom, an hour later you're there. That is so far from the truth. It's insane. I mean, I saw Matinicus at 6 a.m. I didn't reach Matinicus and start passing it until probably probably about 11 in the morning, maybe 12. So like 6 hours later, after standing and watching these islands slowly get clearer and clearer. So you pass them, there's lobster pots, there's all this stuff, fishing boats, everything. We get past them, winds, thankfully, they're coming just perfect out of the southeast. And so we're broad reaching, full sail, just cruising. I'm just drinking coffee after coffee. I make a big breakfast burrito, just trying to enjoy, but I'm absolutely brain dead, and I can't sleep because there's lobster pots, and I'm having to avoid those. So it's one of those situations where I know I'm in it for the long haul. I'm just trying to listen to music, podcasts, whatever. I have to be up in that cockpit. It's kind of cold, but it's also windy, and it's sort of cloud cover, but it's sunny, so I'm putting sunscreen on. It's cold. I hate doing that. But I've been getting cooked out here. And then, basically just kept going and going and going and going. And then just after noon, I finally start to see things that I recognize, mostly Owlhead Lighthouse, and beeline it for that, peel in. Engine pretty much held up. Nothing to report there. A little bit of, I definitely need to go through the fuel system again, but pretty much solid performance, and did the turn into Rockland. Took the drifter down, locked that up, kept the mainsail up for a while. When I did drop that one, the engine was already running, and she's pretty much ready to go. I can drop the main, and I have the staysail there. If the engine quits, I can raise them in 2 seconds, that sort of thing. It's normally what you want to do if you're approaching anywhere. You know, you never want to be the guy who's packing up everything, puts the sail cover on, and motors in, because if that motor quits on you, then what are you going to do? So always keep that stuff ready, and then once you're on the dock, that's when you want to do it. Just a little top tip from old J-Rome here. So got in, boom. Dave's here, Murph's here. They're on the dock, they're waiting. Big hugs, tie off. The world, after rolling around through all that stuff in the Gulf of Maine yesterday, the world was pitching 20 degrees every direction. I could barely stand up. Stayed on the floating dock, which was getting hit by some of these waves for a good long while, and then walked through the parking lot. I don't know if it's because I'm getting older or what, but the land sickness hits me a lot harder these days than it used to. And Murph hands me a little shot of Fireball instantly, and then we go in, say hi to a bunch of people. The whole main family is up here. They're already gripping and ripping, ready. We're all going to have a big old summer, start moving boats, and I don't know when we'll haul Sparrow out, but it'll be within this. It'll either be tomorrow or next week. But we got a little tiny dock here already. We're gonna put the rest of the docks in soon enough, I guess. But they were like, "Hey, if you need the day off tomorrow, you go for it." But we're gonna start at 7:30, and I was like, "I will be there." Now, whether or not I actually show up, I don't know. I'm almost 100% sure I will. Just because I am ready to get in there and start launching some boats. There's 3 of us running the yard this year, plus Murph on auxiliary. But it's basically going to be Jim, Dave, and I trying to kill it and launch all these boats and then pull them all back out this fall. So really looking forward to being part of a team for the summer and making this place shine. Great customer service, all that. Night Marine, biggest little boatyard in Maine. Best little boatyard in Maine. So proud. I even wore the staff shirt today when I came in. You know, wearing my blues. Got to make sure you represent. But then, yeah, after that, pretty much beers were flowing. Somebody got a pizza real quick and had a couple slices. Now it is just about 6 p.m. and I am all ready to go chug some water and go right to bed. If I could sleep for 12 hours, oh, it's going to be the best 12 hours ever. I can't even wait. What the dreams that I'm going to have are going to be nuts. I'm actually looking forward to it. But I've got a heater going. I'm plugged into shore power. Oh, it feels so good. It feels so good. It was such a, out at sea, I try and stay as positive as possible, especially when I'm doing the podcast, try and look on the bright side. But I do have to say, this passage from Ocean City was probably one of the most frustrating, mentally challenging passages I've had. Such fickle wind, light wind, fog, no wind, then a bunch of wind, then waves, then no wind, all that sort of stuff. It was tough. It was mentally very daunting, especially the fact that I knew that I sort of had that option where I could have gone and just stayed offshore and all that. But I don't know. We'll get into that in more detail when my brain actually works a little bit better. I figured I would just throw this one out, and I'm going to link on probably a two-parter. So number 1 and number 2 of the sailing trip up here. And then, yeah, if all goes well and I can lock Murphy down, Murph and I are going to do a podcast tomorrow night. And I don't know when I'll put that one out, but I'm going to put this one out right now. So thanks again for listening. We are literally only about 100 downloads away from 50,000 downloads, which is so cool. I'm kind of excited about that, and we're just going to keep on blasting through. And so coming up will be part 1 and part 2 of leaving from Ocean City, and I'm going to get some sleep. Thanks for listening. And as always, if you want to support the podcast, dude, head on over to Patreon and join the crew, and we'll keep this podcast rolling. Thanks for my Patreon family that's already supporting this podcast and keeping it going, because without you guys, it wouldn't be still rolling. So take care, and here we go, part 1 and part 2. Oh, yeah, baby. Here we go. Microphone. Check. That. Check. Put that down. Let's get this situated. Copy me now. Oh, yeah. All right, it is May 14th. We have been at sea for approximately 11 hours, and I am feeling good because gray skies have finally cleared up, so I'm putting on a happy face. Oh, man. Let's just break down today's events so far. Obviously, wake up early, 5:30, dense pea soup fog, and looking at basically no end in sight. It does say that it's supposed to clear around 8 in the morning. That's well past high tide, which technically is slack water, although I'm going to find out that it's actually not. But I was gaming for leaving at high tide, which was 7 a.m. So I mess around, I get everything. There's only a couple little things to do. Fire up the engine, pretty easy. Nothing too crazy about that. Everything works really well. What's going on with this microphone? Oh, it's slipping. It's all right. I'll give it a little support. So everything's looking good. I do see that the halyards are wrapped a little bit, but like one of them's overlapping the other one, and I could not get it sorted out on the dock. I've actually always found that it's easier to do that out at sea when the boat is rolling a little bit. So we're going to see how that goes. Maybe that was a good decision, bad decision. But everything was coated in so much moisture. I went to climb the mast, got up to about the staysail halyard, which is about 2/3 of the way up, and was not feeling too good about it. Figured, you know what? Let me keep trying. Tried a bunch more from the deck. It's about 6:30 at this point, and basically went back up the mast another time. Got really close and started to sort of feel like, this just doesn't feel very good. I didn't want to be up there. Everything. I mean, my bare feet were just sliding around on these pegs like never before. And so I was like, okay, well, we'll figure this one out later. And the overlapping stuff, I've seen that before. There's two big pulleys up there, two big shivs. And there's a lot of space in between them, so there's never a ton of pressure. It's not like a crazy overlap. So it's not too big of a deal. But it is something I was like, oh, man, because when I took the bowsprit off, a lot of lines got shifted around, and when I put them back, I don't know if I did it correctly. Sometimes those things just sort of escape me, I guess you could say. But in any event, me, sorted that as much as I wanted to sort it, and then I just sort of waited and watched the fog. Again, high tide was supposed to be at 7 a.m., and so at 7 a.m., I untied the lines. There's no wind inside the marina. Piece of cake. Engine is purring away. No big worries. Mongo is ready to go. The only thing I needed to attach was the wind blade, and took off in super dense fog. I'd say I could probably see, I want to say 100 yards, but it was probably a little bit less than that. And as I left the super, super protected harbor at Sunset Marina, which shout out to Karen. She was the all-star in the office, super, super nice, and was willing to let me bend her ear for many a minute because I was pretty lonely over there. But so shout out Karen, you do a great job. I'm going to definitely write a review and make sure she gets name recognition. Working in the service industry for as long as I did, I know how those things work their way up the old chain of command, and they pay attention to them. So I'm going to make sure she gets her she gets exactly what she deserves, which is a great review and a name shout out. So in any event, I head out of this little protected channel, and then boom, there's like a kayaker there. Right to the first buoy, get into it. It's high tide, so I got a little wiggle room on how close I can get and all that sort of stuff. And I'm motoring, and I get past into sort of the main channel area where the inlet is just a 1/10 of a mile away. And I notice on the first buoy I go to pass, the current is moving, and it's moving in. It's still coming in, which when I think about it, I think back to the dockmaster down at Ladies Island, Aaron, and he would always say, slack water is not usually until about a half hour after high tide. And I should have heeded that advice a little, but I'm almost glad I didn't, and I'll tell you why. As I make my way out this little inlet, there's two break walls. One goes and then does... Coast Guard. Yeah, we're going to turn that right off. They do so many pans. It's so crazy. Not like traditional pans. But anyway, so I'm headed. One of them, it goes straight out, and then the other one goes straight and then kinks in towards the channel. And all the guys that I talked to on the fishing boats, they said, make sure you stay right in the middle of that channel, bud. That's where it's deep. Everything else, you never really know. Things are always shifting around here, all that sort of stuff. And the current is just ripping me around. So I'm hand steering. I've got the engine on. We're pushing 1,200 RPM, which on Mighty Sparrow is a lot. Normally, I'm running 900 to 1,000, and that's cruising speed. I'm barely doing a knot and a half, because it's coming in that strong. So we're going, and we're basically getting closer and closer, and I'm starting to feel the swell coming in from the ocean, which I couldn't see it through the binoculars. I had seen it the day before. It looked pretty calm, but there were still definitely some breakers. And I'm thinking to myself, oh, geez, what have I got myself into? But I do know I have my exit plan. Exit plan essentially is just turn around and come back in and go tie back up to the dock until later. And with the help of, an iPad and all that sort of stuff, and now knowing that channel really well and the buoyage and all that sort of stuff, it wouldn't have been too much of an issue even without the iPad. It's a really well-marked little area. And I get further and further, and now, I'm hearing the waves breaking on the breakwalls. I can see one of the breakwalls, and I can see all these fishermen are out there, and they're sort of looking at me. I got my nav lights on, everything, because it's really foggy. And you're close to those walls. I was probably 100 feet away, tops, and then boom, buoy comes out, and then the other buoy, and that's sort of the entrance. And that's where the wave action is definitely the biggest. And maybe 50 feet on one side, waves are heaping up and then breaking. And then 50 feet on the other side, they're breaking over the submerged part of the jetty, which, I'm just trying to keep my track and my line so that I stay right in the middle. Sorry, I'm going to do a little, oh, geez. All right, I'm just going to hold the microphone. And essentially, get through some of that, but then the waves are probably 3 to 4 with the every once in a while 5-footer coming in, not breaking unless they're hitting something. And Sparrow's doing a pretty good job. I don't have the mainsail up, so we're rolling pretty heavily with each one, but the engine's doing great. We're starting, as soon as we got out of that jetty area, we started to pick up speed a little bit. Now we're doing 2.5, almost 3 knots, and we're aiming to get above one set of shoals out to the next red buoy and then stay below the other set of shoals. It's a really sort of tricky area, which is part of the reason why I ended up staying as long as I did. There wasn't a whole lot of margin for error. I mean, had the engine conked out at that point, there was no wind. So I probably would have been out of luck at that point. The most I could have done was toss the anchor, which is stowed down below right now, but easily accessible so that within, say, 30 seconds, I could have had it overboard. But still, you don't want to be sitting there in pea soup fog anchored in the middle of an inlet with tide racing and 4-foot waves coming in. So in any event, mainsail's ready to go just in case. And I get into sort of a comfortable area and sort of realize that I'll bet you had I left an hour later to see if maybe the fog would lift, which in fact it never did. It just lifted, and it is now like 5:30 p.m. I think with the current going out against those seas would have probably become at least a little more heaped up, if not actual breakers, and then it would have been trouble for Sparrow's engine, which is pretty old, to be able to punch through some of those waves would not have been a pleasant thing to go through. So I was kind of glad that I called it and ended up, or I screwed up, and ended up leaving earlier than Slackwater, because with the tide coming in still, it definitely would have chalked down some of those waves and made it a little less chaotic for me. But so then pretty much slightest little breeze came up after about maybe an hour of just straight motoring, and so I threw up the mainsail. Still kind of half slatting, half filling, but I think it added a little bit to the speed. And one of the things that was interesting is I sort of backed off on the RPMs just a little bit, and I definitely felt like, whoa, the speed just really dropped. But I looked around, and I actually went up. I went up to the bow to make sure I wasn't dragging something off of the bobstay or the bobstay fitting. And I looked aft as well, make sure the prop was clear. Everything looked fine. But our speed had dropped down. We were doing like 2.5 knots, motor sailing. Not really sailing, but motoring with the sail. And that went on for another hour and a half maybe. And then the wind picked up enough where I put up the staysail, and then actually the wind picked up out of the southeast enough, so I threw up the drifter as well. And again, it's light. It's like 6 to 7 knots of wind, if that. Pretty big rolling swell, so the boat's moving. So you need a good bit of wind to keep those sails filled and prevent Sparrow from rocking. And so I put up all that stuff, and I go, thank goodness, get to shut the engine down after like 3-4 hours of motoring, listening to the old kerchunk, 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 and shut the engine down, and I hear tunk, 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 tunk. And I'm thinking to myself, oh no, did the prop shaft just snap, or has like one of the blades on the prop dislodged a little bit and now is hitting the rudder? Oh my gosh, like worst case scenarios are coming up in my head. I run back from in the cabin, and I look down at the prop. Prop looks fine, but then something else catches my eye, and it's bright pink, and it's bright yellow, and it's a lobster buoy, and it is just clunking against the rudder. And somehow, and it'll be interesting when I get hauled out in Maine to be able to see what happened, but there used to be a tab that ran from the keel over the little gap to the rudder, which prevented lobster pots and things like that from actually getting stuck in there. And somehow, and I don't know how, either that has snapped off, or because I still remember feeling it when I was cleaning the bottom of the boat at Ladies Island. So at least back then it was still there. But somehow this lobster pot got lodged in there. So I slow the boat way down. I'm thinking to myself, oh my God, you'd be kidding me. I got to get in the water. It's freezing cold out. It's still foggy. I'm not that far off ashore. Man, it's one of those things like, what next? But I was able to slow the boat down, and the buoy just got enough buoyancy, or had enough buoyancy to float a little bit higher, and I was able to snag it with the boat hook and then give it a good pull. And I don't know if it's a lobster pot, crab pot, fish pot, who knows. It wasn't that heavy, so I'm kind of thinking it was not a lobster pot. But I give it a good pull, bring up some of the line, about maybe 3-4 feet of it, and then drop it. And then nothing happens. And then I do it again and again and again, because I really didn't want to cut it. Cutting somebody's fish trap or lobster trap is like stealing money out of their bank account or out of their wallet. And so I really did not want to have to do that. But I also did not want to have to jump in the water either. So last time I did it, maybe after 5-6 tries, I pulled up a whole bunch of it, and I drop all of it in except for the buoy, and then boom, it is free. Oh my gosh, I see the line pull off to the other side. Again, it's not that heavy. Throw the buoy back in, and then boom, I am out of here. Oh man, I didn't really inspect the line to see if I had damaged it at all. My concern was not really for that. Maybe I should have, I don't know. But with how stormy it's been, I don't even know. That lobster buoy or that pot could have come from 200 miles north of us. So Lord only knows. But get that over and done with. Super relieved. Still crazy foggy. And then, boom, literally minutes later, the AIS alarm is just blaring at me. And essentially the inlet for Philadelphia, Delaware Bay, all that sort of stuff is crowded with about 6 big ships. A few of which are either anchored or just hovering, but there's a couple that are making maneuvers to go in there. And so now I got to cut pretty much right through the middle of those guys, but it's dense fog. I'm not hearing a single sound signal out there. And I have my sound signal, which was a high decibel whistle, in the cockpit ready. But usually those big container ships and stuff, if they're in fog, they're throwing their, because it's just a recording or whatever, and they just, every minute you're getting that big blast. I didn't hear a single thing. It was kind of interesting. Up in Maine, hear it all the time. But any event, so after probably an hour and a half of sort of weaving and changing course and super light winds, the winds finally die again. Fire the engine back up, take the sail down, that sort of thing. And then 20, 30 minutes later, the wind comes back up. It's also raining a lot. I don't know. It was one of those days where I kept just thinking to myself, boy, when this finally clears up and this fog lifts and the rain stops and the wind fills in, it is going to be a awesome feeling. So take in this misery. I mean, I was soaking wet. The entire inside of the boat, the cabin sole was just covered in water. I didn't even bother trying to mop any of it up until the rain stopped. But eventually, and probably about 20 minutes ago, everything has lifted up. Even the sun is starting to peek its way through, but mostly down to the south, there is actual sun and some blue sky. So I figured I'd pop on down, do a little podcast update, because I think it's going to be, I'll probably take a little early nap tonight, but with the moon almost full, pretty excited about the night. Hopefully it'll clear up. I know there might be some thunderstorms lurking around, so I do have to keep my eye out for that, but the winds should shift out of the southwest around 9 or 10 tonight, and then we should have solid breeze for the coming days. So I'm looking forward to that, and it'll take some sail changes and such, but I'll cook a nice little dinner tonight, try and stay up a little bit, maybe listen to some podcasts, I don't know. And just enjoy the rip. It's going to be only like 4 or 5 days tops, because we should have wind the whole time, but right now we are going 054 degrees, and we're at 38 degrees, 34 north, 74 degrees, 23 west, which puts us just a little northeast of Ocean City, probably about, I'm going to just guess, 40 miles. It's been a slow morning, but slow day, I should say. But hopefully tonight we'll speed things up and start moving this boat. It's got a little bit of growth on the bottom. Unfortunately, you sit in a marina, that's kind of what happens. But other than that, just wanted to do a quick little update, and that's about it. So cheers, everybody. It's almost time for the old sundowner. I'm pretty excited about that. And hopefully that lobster buoy or that fish pot was the one hiccup of the trip. We'll just chalk it up to that, and we'll check back in when anything else happens, or we'll do the same thing tomorrow, just before sunset. So thanks for listening, and the next one will be probably tomorrow. All right, hey, welcome back aboard Mighty Sparrow. It is May 15th. I believe, and so that puts us on a Sunday. Supposedly there's a lunar eclipse tonight. I doubt I'm going to be able to see it just because of the haze and the fog and all that sort of stuff, but we are moving yet again. We did a bit of a drift today. Last night, a bit of a recap here. Last night was, I don't know, I guess typical of what I would call coastal sailing, where you're less than 100 miles from shore. So still over the continental shelf, lots of scalloping boats and bottom draggers and all that sort of stuff, doing like zigzag patterns. So we had to sort of bust through them, but the moon was out, even though it was cloaked in a bit of haze. We had this beautiful sunset and all that, but yeah, the winds were fickle, and so a lot of sail changes, a lot of switching around from the drifter to the pulled out jib to the mainsail, all this sort of stuff, trying to just eke anything out. And there was one point, probably just after midnight, where the winds filled in strong enough where I was able to just go and head down and sleep for about 2.5 hours, and then woke up to the AIS alarm with a few more fishing boats around, but broke free of those guys. And actually, just to be able to get away from them, the winds were so light, I ended up firing up the engine just before dawn, and just to put me in a little distance in between us and them. It's not so much that they bother me or anything. It's just I don't want to get in their way, and the zigzag pattern that they do is sort of a little unpredictable. So when I'm trying to make a little space, I'm not always sure if I'm doing the right thing. And we were, it was fogged in, so I could hear them, but I couldn't see them. And they were only about a half a mile away or something like that. And there were a few cargo ships and things because we're pretty close still. And we actually, we rammed right through the wake of a Japanese container ship that was over 1,000 feet long. Holy cow. You get used to that rhythm of the swell and the sea, and everything's normal, and you sort of situate things, and then it was like wham. We hit this pretty steep little wave, two of them, and it's like, oh yeah, that ship just passed about 10 minutes ago, about a mile away. That makes sense. But for now, we basically went and we were able to motor. Probably motored for about, I want to say, 5 hours, and then I just had enough. It's a nice day. The fog hasn't lifted by any means, but it's more of a haze than anything now. And I just ended up drifting. I figured, why not? One more good old drift on Old Sparrow. And it was funny because I was thinking about it. I mean, I've literally drifted on this boat. No sails up, no wind at all for hours on end, everywhere around this planet. Like literally the Pacific, the Atlantic, the Indian Ocean, Southern Ocean, I don't know technically if I've been up in the Arctic or not. I think you have to get past 60 degrees north, but yeah, just lots of, that's the one thing you can sort of count on. You never know if you're going to get hit by a big storm or if the winds are going to be perfect, or if you're going to get a rain or a thunderstorm. But I cannot think of a single sailing trip I've ever been on that I haven't at least at some point been becalmed. And it's kind of an unusual thing because today, in today's world, and when I used to do yacht deliveries, the minute you fell below a certain speed, you turn the engine on. So there was never... It was something that I never really experienced being becalmed until I was on Mighty Sparrow and was in the position of, well, I'm not in any hurry, so I'd rather not motor, so let's just drift here for a little while. And I don't know, it's kind of funny. It's a throwback to my time in the British Virgin Islands at the bitter end, because that was one of the things we used to do when I first got there was go out for a drift. My buddy Scott, he had a nice big inflatable dinghy and stuff for doing the kite surfing, and we'd go and fill up a cooler and just go out and drift with a bunch of people, and that was always a blast. I mean, now obviously it's just me, but I don't know. There's something about that. The idea of just drifting, especially the further you are offshore, the better, I think, because it sort of sticks you in the elements, right into Mother Nature, so to speak. And I don't know, there's something cool about that. It's nice to be sailing and using the environment, but then there's also sort of a, I don't know, there's kind of an interesting aspect of just giving yourself over to it and just drifting away. I don't know, who knows? I'm getting super philosophical out here. But in any event, I took a little nap today, got a little more sleep, just like a power nap, 30 minutes or something like that, and then woke up with a bunch of energy. So was sort of up on deck, checking things out, looking around, and oh man, this wind is actually filling in. This is great. Oh, we're doing 5 knots. Okay. Yeah, there were patches of cat's paws and stuff like that on the surface. And the wind was light, but it kind of felt like it was building. And the forecast says it's going to build. Should be blowing 7 to 10 for the rest of the day and night. And yeah, I figured I'd just throw the sails up. And so we're sailing now and we're actually cruising. I'm going to take a look on deck. I'll keep shouting at you all. Make sure you know we're still there. Woo! Oh, baby! Nice. Oh. Man, I was only motoring for, like I said, like 5 hours. So we started motoring probably at about 3 in the morning. And then we motored until about 8 or 9 this morning. And then I shut down the engine. So I've been drifting for about 2-3 hours. Slept some of that. But now we're back underway, and it's going to be kind of interesting. Headed to the southern edge of the Great South Channel in between Cape Cod and George's Bank. And the plan is to go straight north from there. It's a pretty heavy shipping area, all that sort of stuff. It's usually foggy. It's a place you don't want to be in bad weather. And on the forecast, in 2.5 days, there's like this quick shot of nasty northwesterly winds, 20-30s. Like it shows a dead calm, and then the next 3-hour block is 30 knots of wind, and then it sort of tames off and holds that direction. So I don't know. I think it may be some sort of little thunderstorm cell or whatever. I think it's one of those things where I got to update the weather and see if it's developed in anything. But I'm going to do that tomorrow. And we're just going to keep plugging away. It's like 200 something miles to that first waypoint. And then to get away from the dangers of George's Bank is probably about 60, 70 miles into the Gulf of Maine. And then it's another like 80 miles to get into Rockland. So hopefully we will just have sort of southerlies for the next day or two, which will get us right to where we want to go, and then westerlies to take us past George's Bank. And pretty much after that, it's I don't want to say it's all in the bag, but it's pretty much should be pretty easy. I mean, you close in on the coast again, and so it cuts the amount that the waves can get and all that. Obviously, I would really love to go through this trip without a thunderstorm and lightning, but if it's in the books, it's in the books. Just trying to sort of take it all in, enjoy the act of being out here. And tell you, being on the dock for that long really makes you realize just how nice it is out at sea. Excuse me. And it definitely is not lost on me. Obviously, had I been given hindsight and all that sort of stuff, or given the choice with the crystal ball, obviously I wouldn't have gone in. I would have stayed out. But it was definitely a smart thing to do for sure. That system could have developed into something really ugly and just slowly worked its way off the coast and clobbered me. And after tangoing with Wanda, and having that storm sort of chase me and not be able to escape it, that was sort of a bit of a lesson for me, honestly, in just how vulnerable you can be out at sea with some of these systems. So I don't know. But in any event, we're cruising now, so I'm gonna go back up on deck because this wind literally just filled in as we were doing this little podcast update, and this is pretty cool. I wanna get up there. It's half sun, half haze. I'll tell you, we had definitely the coolest moon bow this morning. It was so cool. Early before night came, it just, like, I don't know, it's like a fog. The fog has to be just right and the moon has to be just right, which I think the moon is full tonight, and you get a white rainbow essentially in the sky, which I don't know, it's not as spectacular obviously as a regular rainbow, but it's super rare, so there's that to consider. Oh man. But yeah, at this point, I don't know. I'm just cruising, and we'll see how things go. Like I said, we'll update the forecast. I was listening to the forecast on the VHF, and I may tune that back in. That's how I'm close enough in that I can actually hear that. I think I'm about 75, 80 miles offshore, and I don't know if I can get I don't know if I'll get the forecast for Cape Cod and George's Bank yet, but I don't know. Just like any other trip, the forecast, you can only trust it for a little bit, and even then, who knows. But I'll tell you, today they got it spot on because it said by noon the wind was going to fill in, and it's 20 to noon right now, and the wind has filled in. So that is pretty cool. So we should have this for the next 48 hours, which will get us right where we want to go. Hopefully, if we get a pretty strong northwesterly, then I always have the option, instead of pounding into it in the Great South Channel, is just to head a little further east and go around George's Bank, sort of ride the storm off to the east, and then as things switch back up, then head north. Because it's then supposed to come out of the south, but it's the Gulf of Maine, so chances are it's going to be becalmed. But I have plenty of fuel, and the engine's running really well, so knock on wood, hopefully that continues. And, all in all, if I can just get into Rockland Friday morning, that would be fantastic. And hopefully then we could haul the boat right out. Get to work on Monday. Oh, back to the grind. All right, so that's our update from day 2. Is it day 2? Ah, boy, how you lose this in your brain. I'd have to open up the logbook, and I don't want to do that right now. I got to do that in 18 minutes for the noon log. I believe yes, it is day 2. So day 2 of the voyage, back up to Rockland, Maine from Ocean City, Maryland. All right, next update coming.